This is Whitney, and welcome back to an episode of Spastic Chatter. This is a special of Spastic Chatter, and I have with me Jacob Levy. Levi, hopefully I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. And he is a career coach for people with disabilities. And I thought it would be cool to have him on to talk about employment and some other things related to the disability community. So I will let Jacob introduce himself, and then we'll get on to the conversation. So take it away, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Whitney. Yeah, and I think we met in the DLC.
Yes, look, for those that don't know, the DLC, it's the Disabilities Leadership Collective. That's what I work at Disability, and that's where we met, is within the community.
Absolutely. It's an amazing community. I started on there just in the Facebook group, and then there was so much like amazing information and resources. I was like, I want to learn more, and that's how I found out about the DLC. But anyway, my name is Jacob Levy. I am a career coach, disability advocate, special education teacher, and person with a disability. I acquired hydrocephalus at birth due to a brain hemorrhage, and it resulted into mainly like memory retrieval issues. I didn't know this, but apparently I was a candidate for CP. I don't have CP, but according to the nurse at birth and scores and things like that, I was a candidate for CP. I do have like some light symptoms. Like I definitely, one side of my body, like I walk on my tippy toes. I didn't even know I did it until I think my sibling pointed it out to me. I have like really strong calves, and I thought it was just because I played soccer. I was like, all right, I get strong calves. But then my sibling pointed out, I was like, yeah, you walk on your tippy toes. I had no idea. So that's that. And yeah, I mean, I would say I have other like mild symptoms. I have a lazy eye. I wear glasses. I've worn a patch. I wore a patch for years as a kid, and glasses to like correct my vision. I have a shunt that basically like relieve the pressure of CSF, cerebral spinal fluid, when I was born. But yeah, I would say memory retrieval is like the biggest thing, and I've learned to create strategies for myself to remember just like basic information. But anyway, onto the career coaching stuff. What I do is I help job seekers target opportunities specifically outside their network using platforms such as LinkedIn. LinkedIn's my absolute favorite platform. It is, once people understand how to actually use it, it's a total beast of a platform. It's a ridiculous platform. Once people understand that, like LinkedIn and really any of these platforms, how they work is you have to give to a platform. You can't just get on a platform and sit there for a month and be like, I haven't gotten a job. This platform sucks. Doesn't work like that. You have to engage, or you have to go on offense. The problem is most people sit on defense, meaning they might like apply to some jobs here and there. That's defense. Defense is just waiting, right? It's like clicking submit 50 times a day and just playing the waiting game. Mm-hmm. That might have worked 20 years ago. Today, it's much more proactive than reactive, meaning you have to push out content that supports what you do. You have to target decision makers. You have to engage on people's content. All of that right there, you can't do that on a job board. Not that I know of. Like, you can't be that engaging on a job board until you get a response. So that's why I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. Clubhouse is amazing as well. You can literally hop in a room and talk with hiring managers, recruiters, etc. And you can add your actual value in like immediately. You don't have to wait 30 days for an email. You can straight up talk to someone live. So there's so many great pieces of technology that job seekers can utilize. It's just a matter of like understanding how a platform behaves, really. That's what I do.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that about LinkedIn, that you can like, I didn't I didn't put that together when you mentioned when you mentioned Clubhouse. I didn't associate that with like job seeking. So that's a that's really cool that you bring that to people's attention, because because Clubhouse, like, what comes to my mind is Clubhouse is you're communicating um, sort of one-on-one with that person. And for people with disabilities, they like a big part of job interviews are like speaking to employers is that if you have a physical disability, your disability is on display immediately when you roll into the room or walk into the room. And on Clubhouse, they're just listening to your voice. Like, there's not a video component, or so it might be less, like in my from my point of view, I see Clubhouse being like less daunting and like a way to get your foot in the door per se, without that added judgment that comes from going to a physical interview. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think because of the pandemic, so many businesses have shut down, unfortunately, like all over the US, the world. But in another light, at least for people with disabilities, or I'll just speak for myself, I think it's been a total game changer. I've never had more autonomy and independence to like, I get to work from home. I can take my own breaks. I have I have things in place at home that I don't have in place in an office, right? Because like I don't want people to judge me or whatever. I have it all set up at home. So I think it's a massive advantage. I think the pandemic has done a lot of amazing things, but at the same time, it's like you have to see it that way,
Yeah.
right? It's a mindset shift.
And like, just to add to that, I know myself included, like before the pandemic, and then like when the pandemic started, and like there's like tons of remote jobs since the pandemic started. And like I see when I'm like looking, when I'm like conversing with like people in the disability community, I'm like, they're like, where was this before the pandemic? We as a community have been looking for these opportunities, and it took a pandemic to offer those, to make those accessible, because not every like because remote work was kind of like very, or not kind of, it was very scarce pre-pandemic. Like, it was very hard to find remote work.
Right. Well, I think it's a number of things. On the employer side, I think employers were so obsessed with like the show, right? And what I mean by that is like they insisted on people coming into work. Why? Because they have clients coming into work, right? New business. So they want to show off their, fancy office and their open office plan and their foosball tables and just like ridiculous stuff that it's like, now that it's a pandemic, everyone works from home. It's like you realize we could have done this the whole time, right? And also they could have saved tons of money, right? They didn't have to rent out these huge fancy office spaces. But the employers that have realized that, I mean, kind of late in the game, but now with the pandemic, the ones that have realized that have pivoted. The ones that are still like stuck in their ways have folded, right? That like they don't exist anymore.
Exactly. Because like I'll go into like my journey of employment. Like, I tried the physical, like going to a physical job, and like I I only lasted like 6 months because not because I couldn't do the job, but because of all the hustle and bustle to like get to like I had to take the bus to get to my job location, and I lived 10 minutes away from my work, but it took me 2 hours to get to work because or 2 hours most of the time an hour like anywhere between an hour and 2 hours because there were so many stops
Right.
on the bus. Like people had to like they had to stop and let people off, and there was just so much that I had to go through to actually get to work. By the time I got to work, I was already emotionally like spent. Like I didn't have enough spoons to do like a whole work day and then have to get back on the bus at the end of the work day to get home. And like I worked 6 months at a physical location, and then after that I like decided to quit, and I was looking for remote work, and I decided to volunteer first. I went on a volunteer match, and I decided to volunteer for an organization, and that position and I got a position with a disability organization, and I started out as a volunteer, and then after 3 years I worked my way up to essentially running the organization in a paid position.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what led me to disability, like through like networking and stuff. So like you you were talking about being earlier you were talking about being proactive. You can't just sit around and like wait for a job to come to you. You have to put in the effort to go out and like apply for jobs and like do your outreach. Because I always say I started from the bottom, and now I'm the director of operations for a company. Like I didn't get this position because I just applied for a job and let it happen. I worked my ass off like to get to where I am today. If any of that makes sense, but might have went off on a ramble, but like
No, you worked, you earned it.
yeah. What when it comes to like resources and stuff, like what do you mention like volunteer like walk me through the process when you get a new client, like what is your process in helping them?
For sure. So the first thing that I like to understand about a job seeker with a disability, I work with all kinds of job seekers, by the way, but my niche is working with those with disabilities. It's kind of like being a special education teacher, which I think you mentioned that's your background as well.
I have a master's degree in special ed, but I haven't used it. I've used it more as like a disability studies, but yeah.
Sure. But you understand the jargon and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, okay, it's very similar. I took a few approaches from being a SPED teacher. So like what I'll do is I'll do like an interest inventory, which basically if you take like an IEP, an individual education plan, it looks like there's a child's strengths and weaknesses, right? More or less. Same thing with a job seeker, right? Especially if they have a disability, I want to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, right? They might know what they want. Like, I want to go and be a graphic designer. That's great. Typically, when somebody has a disability, they, or I'll just speak for myself because I don't like making blanket statements. Like, I definitely have my strengths, right? I think I am like a visual, auditory, and tactile kinesthetic learner. I'm a little bit of everything, right? I got to see it, I got to hear it, I got to like touch it. I like to understand how a person learns. I think that's super important because when I'm working with them, are they better hearing it, seeing it, like physically grasping something. So I think that's really important. I like to like try and understand how a person learns, or as they call it in education, metacognition. So I like to do that. And then we do like a top-down approach. So I look at industries, right? Like what industries interest you? IT, finance, hospitality, food and beverage. Like there's a million industries. Okay. And then once we look at that, we get a little further and we look at job titles with those industries, right? A project manager in one industry could be called a program manager or a product manager or a million different types of managers. And then from those job titles, they can pick more than one job title, by the way, right? There are synonyms. Every job title has a synonym. So I encourage them to like look at different job titles. From those job titles, then we look at job descriptions, right? Because then that's like the meat of it. That looks at like what their actual responsibilities are, their requirements, things like that. These are really important because within the job description are keywords. Keywords are really important, especially when you are advertising yourself to look for work, right? Like, yeah, you do have to apply and blah, 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 but like, I don't think that's the most important part. I think the most important part is visibility. Like, you need to get visible to employers. Clicking submit on a job board 100 times a day does not get you visible. Why? Because typically at a large or medium company, a resume goes through an ATS or an applicant tracking system. Once you do that, in my opinion, you do not have an advantage because your resume is now being taken away from human hands and into artificial intelligence. In other words, it's just scanning for keywords. So it's kind of like, where's the advantage? It's just a piece of paper, right? And I don't know what keywords they're actually scanning for. So what I do is I actually encourage them to basically create a brand for yourself on a platform like LinkedIn. So that's a lot, right? A brand is a representation of yourself. And basically, a brand is like you're treating yourself as a product or a service. Why? Because it's what you can do for a company. They don't really care where you went to school or blah, blah, blah. They want to know, like, what can you do for us to make money? I mean, to put it bluntly, like that's how they survive, right? So there's a lot of things you can do, right? Besides like marketing yourself, you got a LinkedIn banner. Your profile is embedded with keywords, right? Nobody knows my name, Whitney. Nobody's typing in Jacob Levy to find me. That's not how they find me. They find me by keywords. So for example, I just had a fintech company find me for a speaking gig because the recruiter was looking for job seekers with disabilities, and they typed in disability and probably some other keywords, and my profile popped up. Why? Because I have that word in my profile.
That's cool.
Yeah. So again, they don't have to know my name. That's not how they get found because they don't have my resume. So keywords, in my opinion, are like king and queen on these platforms. And it's not just LinkedIn, Clubhouse, Facebook, Instagram. They all run on keywords. I mean, I don't know the back end. I'm not an expert with like the engineering on the back end, but in a nutshell, treat them like a Google search.
Yeah, and like you said that you got a speaking opportunity through LinkedIn by your keyword of disability. I actually have people reach out to me through like Instagram and other platforms because I use specific like hashtags and like and things like that because it's all about keywords and admitting I can't speak. I'm not as versed in LinkedIn. I need to be, but you're piquing my interest with this conversation. Because I didn't realize all of it, what all LinkedIn had to offer. So this is really interesting to me. I have one question that I want to ask. Do you talk to your job seekers with disabilities about when to disclose your disability to your employer? Do you have that conversation with them?
The conversation does arise, yes. So typically, I mean, people ask me all sorts of questions, but typically what I focus on is like getting the job, right? So everything that comes before you get the job. So the job search, marketing yourself, interviewing, yeah, accessibility questions, checking that box, the EEOC, like that you have a disability. Here's this is just my experience because I've tried it as a job seeker with a disability. So I've tried many different things. I've checked the box. I've left it blank. And I've noticed very mixed results.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they didn't even catch it. Like HR sometimes didn't even catch that I checked the box. And then sometimes they did. They were very responsive. They called me into a meeting the first week of work. I met with like the entire team. They asked me what what accommodations or modifications I need, things like that. So in my experience, I would say to do your research on a company before you even, like, if you want to target a company, look up what's their policy on disability, like what's their culture, are they an inclusive company? Great, let me read some reviews about it, right? Like, look to the people of a company, right? What I mean by that is like look to the employees, like what are they saying about it? Everybody talks, right? It's the internet, people leave reviews, like people, there's no holds barred, right? With reviews, you could find whatever you want in a company. Another thing I suggest is do informational interviews on a company. You can talk to HR before they have interest in you, right? You can straight up, like, I show people how to find whatever company you want, find the HR decision makers, and you can literally ask them questions. You can ask to connect with them. There's ways to be creative to do it, and ask them before you waste, hours, days, weeks of your time. Really ask like deep questions about a company's culture, their disability policies, before you waste your time or theirs.
That's cool. I wouldn't have even thought about doing like informational interviews like that. Like from my experience, and this is just my experience. I only disclose I have a disability if if the position that I'm applying for is disability related, and if it's not like disability related, I won't disclose like that I have a disability on my resume or my cover letter.
What do
And
you mean if it's disability related? You mean the actual job title?
yes, like that. If I know the organization is like disability related, like say like diversibility
Oh, I see. Okay.
is disability related, so I disclose that I have a disability. But if
So
the
that's the thing. Like, yeah, diversibility, obviously they're, accessible and I hope inclusive, etc. But other big companies, some talk a big game, right? Like we're stepping up our inclusive initiative, blah blah blah. But I would actually do research ahead of time before you like waste your time interviewing.
exactly.
Talk to employees. Look at, I mean, there is so much information on the internet. I bet you can find reviews from companies about their accessibility initiative or whatever.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there because I've been in this position before, and like it's good to do your research because I've also been in the position where I was like that token disabled person in the company, so they could I felt like I was kind of exploited because they used me in like the events and stuff, but like I'm like to like look good to the public, being like, oh, look at our, we're so inclusive.
Right.
We hired a person with a physical disability. Like,
Right.
look at us. Like, so
Yeah.
I would always do your research on companies, like you said, to check like the culture of, like, just do like a deep dive before you take that leap. Um but how do you So we talked about a lot of things. So do you have any other topics that you want to like touch on that you think is important for people with for disabled people to look
I
at?
think the most like, I don't know what to call this, but the most like motivational thing that I could give to a job seeker with disability, only because I tried it myself. I'm not saying like you do this and you'll get a job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying try a different way, and I will only share what I did, right? I'm not pressuring anyone to do this. I have found success doing this. I got sick and tired of checking the box and like being timid about my disability because it's invisible. Like nobody, I don't think, could tell that I have a disability. But I got so tired of like checking the box and waiting for someone to like call me out and blah blah blah. I started weaving into my content the like what I do, right? My subject matter expertise, and wove in the fact that I have a disability. That way, what it does from an SEO perspective, a search engine optimization perspective, is those recruiters or employers that are looking for job seekers with disabilities will find my content. They will also find me for my subject matter expertise, right? Whatever that is. The reason being, like I mentioned, keywords. They don't need to know who I am. That's not how they find me. They're going to find me much quicker with one post is searchable by pretty much anyone in the world. There's more than 500 million people on LinkedIn. I would say only a percentage of them are actively online, but right before the pandemic, I think there was like 600 million users globally. It's probably not doubled, but it's increased a lot. So one post is searchable by almost anyone in the world. One resume is only a 1-to-1 ratio, right? You have to submit a resume. If you're lucky, it'll get seen, right? I'm not saying for sure it'll get seen. I'm saying if you're lucky. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of pushing out content that supports what you do. You will get way more visible by way more people, and also by the right people, because they're looking for those keywords.
It's awesome, and like you have to, like it shows that you're passionate about a subject like the. So I completely agree. Jacob, where can where can people find you and like follow you on social media? Like reach out to you if they want to utilize your services. Where can they? How can they do that?
For sure. Well, I would say I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm always, on the LinkedIn streets. I'm on Clubhouse as well. I mean, I would say just type in Jacob Levy, Levy, and you will find me. I think I have the same profile picture on both platforms. You probably have to educate me a little, Whitney, on Instagram. I know it's powerful. I just don't use it as much. I know about hashtags and things like that. I'm more LinkedIn centric.
Awesome. Well, I will put I'll put all your info in the description so people can follow you, and I will also put the Diversity Leadership Collective uh, site in the description in case anyone with a disability or ally wants to join. The Leadership Collective is all about accelerating disability influence and visibility, and it's an awesome community. So feel free to check it out. And thank you, Jacob, for being a guest on Spastic Chatter. I enjoyed talking with you. And if for anyone watching this, if you want to be a guest, feel free to reach out, and I would love to have you. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Whitney.